There's not a place with much more athletic tradition than Alabama. 2 all-time great head coaches in Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, 18 national championships spanning over 9 decades, 4 Heisman Trophy winners, dozens of NFL stars, an iconic field, all taking place in a town that's crazy about college football. Hey Bobby? Yeah, I'm kinda in the middle of something here. You know this video's on Alabama basketball, right? Oh. Okay. While Alabama has always been known for its football dominance, it's actually the basketball program that's making more noise this year. The Crimson Tide are currently ranked number 1 in the country for the first time in 20 years, have a record of 22-3 while being 12-0 in a loaded SEC, and they are nationally elite on both ends, as the Tide are one of 2 teams in the country that rank 15th or better in both offensive and defensive efficiency per Bart Torvik, sharing that prestigious distinction with the Houston Cougars, who they actually beat on the road earlier this year. Thanks to Alabama's talent and style, the Tide have produced outstanding performances all year long, and it's safe to say that if the season were to end today, Alabama would be one of the strong favorites to win the NCAA tournament. And so far, they haven't shown any signs of slowing down, literally or figuratively. So let's take a closer look at Alabama, and I'll make the case for why they might just be the best team in the country. Now let me show you what can be the result when style meets talent. If you've ever watched an Alabama game under head coach Nate Oats, the first thing you've probably noticed is how fast they play. This year, for example, Alabama is playing at the second fastest tempo in the country, and this is nothing new, as Oats has always played a very distinct style of basketball in Tuscaloosa. In his 4 seasons at the helm of the Crimson Tide, Oats has never coached a team that finished below 15th when it came to pace of play. And this, combined with the other key factor of Oats' ball, disarms opponents and makes Alabama incredibly difficult to guard. So what is this other half of Oats' ball? Well, it all comes down to shot selection. Over the last decade or so, basketball as a whole has undergone a revolution when it comes to analytics and shot optimization. The mid-range shot has fallen out of favor with modern offenses and has been replaced with a high dosage of 3-pointers and layups, otherwise known as the most efficient shot types on the basketball court, when you adjust the percentages for expected points per shot. For example, if a player shoots 60% at the rim, 45% from mid-range, and 33% from 3, then the initial thought would be that the player should take most of his shots at the rim, then prioritize mid-range attempts over 3-pointers. But when you adjust these percentages for the potential value of making the shot, then you get a different result. On layups, 60% of 2 is 1.2, or 1.2 points per shot. On mid-range shots, 45% of 2 is 0.9, or 0.9 points per shot. But on 3-pointers, 33% of 3 is 1, or 1 point per shot. So when you adjust these percentages when accounting for this way of thinking, then it becomes clear that layups and 3-pointers are actually the shots that provide the highest expected return. And Nate Oats has taken this philosophy to heart. Per Bart Torvik, Alabama only takes 14% of its shots from the mid-range, which is the 4th lowest mark in the country, and it's clear that layups and 3s are the bread and butter when it comes to Alabama's offense. The Tide get close to 52% of their shot attempts on dunks and layups, and on a per-game basis, Alabama's 29.5 3-point attempts per game also ranks 4th in the country. And even though they only hit around 35% from 3 as a team, they are still one of the most dangerous teams from distance because of the sheer volume of attempts combined with their pace of play. Alabama is one of only 10 programs that make 10 or more 3s per game, and it's this level of volume that can overwhelm opponents, especially when you consider the fact that Alabama's defense also ranks among college basketball's elite. And believe me, Oats ball plays a prominent role on that end as well, as the Tide, who as we already know avoid mid-range shots on offense, actually force opponents into taking a whopping 35% of their shots from mid-range areas of the floor, which is a top 10 number in the country. So not only does Alabama avoid taking inefficient shots on offense, but they also force opponents into taking those inefficient shots on defense. And this becomes an incredibly difficult style to play against. But what good is a system without the right players to execute it? Watch all those dreadful Hoiberg years with the Bulls if you want an answer. What makes Alabama so dominant this year is the level of talent and depth that Oats has at his disposal, which accounts for probably the most promising roster in Alabama basketball history. As a team, Alabama has an insane 10 guys that average more than 10 minutes per game, and 9 of those score more than 5 points per game. But with all this depth, nobody shines brighter than 6'8" freshman Brandon Miller, who currently leads the Tide in scoring and rebounding at 19 points and 8 rebounds per game, and is likely on his way to being a top 5 draft pick in June. Miller's fluidity combined with his insane shot-making ability makes him one of the best players in the country, as he's currently shooting 46% from the field and a ridiculous 43% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. As his shooting has gotten more and more dangerous, he's also become better equipped to attack teams on drives to the basket, where he's now finishing at around 71%, despite a slow start from there at the beginning of the season. Miller's fluidity also translates off the ball, as he's a powerful cutter and big-time transition threat, while also having the ability to hit movement threes as well. He's the ultimate floor spacer for Alabama, but with the capability to also create advantages on his own. And while he's not particularly efficient in mid-range situations, I think we've established that Alabama is probably the best school to play for if you struggle from the mid-range. So his deficiencies in that area aren't nearly as damaging than if he were with another program. Aside from Miller though, Alabama also features the deepest and best group of guards in the country. Looking at the roster, there are 5 guys who I would consider high-end starters on most teams, and together these 5 average 43 points per game and shoot a combined 36% from 3, which is even more impressive considering that their best 3-point shooter and leading scorer, Brandon Miller, isn't included in this group. The guard play starts with Ohio transfer Mark Sears, who is currently scoring 14 points per game while shooting a shade under 40% from 3 on the season. Sears spent 2 years in Athens where he was close to a 20-point-a-game scorer as a sophomore, and he's a crafty ball handler that can thrive in either guard spot within Alabama's offense. Sears plays with a great level of composure as he's a very poised shot taker and doesn't really seem to get off kilter a whole lot. It might just be because he's a lefty, but he actually reminds me of a Jalen Brunson type player at Villanova, as someone who is more pace-oriented than athletically gifted, but is still an efficient player nonetheless. Joining Sears as a starter in the backcourt is 6'3" freshman Jaden Bradley. Bradley was a 5-star recruit coming out of IMG Academy, and similar to Sears, he's just brought a level of calm and poise to the Crimson Tide. His 3.4 assists per game leads Alabama's starting lineup, and he's shown great ability as a downhill driver who can finish at the rim through contact. He has a solid and sturdy build that allows him to power through defenders while maintaining body control, and he does most of his damage in the paint, as he's great at utilizing runners and floaters to take advantage of various defensive coverages. While he's not incredibly efficient as a 3-point shooter, Bradley still hits 31% of his attempts, and he can hit open ones if given the opportunity. But again, Bradley's main function in Alabama's offense is his ability to get downhill and create advantages for himself and teammates. Another key freshman in Alabama's rotation is Rylan Griffin, who at 6'5" was a top 50 recruit coming out of high school, where he played and starred next to Kentucky's Cason Wallace at Richardson. Griffin only plays around 16.5 minutes per game, but he's averaging 7 points and hitting 35% of his threes, which makes him a valuable addition to the Tide offense. He's also a switchable piece defensively thanks to his long wingspan, and he's really good as a team defender. Javon Quinterly is another former 5-star prospect who is now in his 3rd season with the Tide after redshirting as a transfer during the 2019-20 season. Despite playing a massive role on the last 2 Alabama teams where he averaged 12 and 13 points a game respectively, Quinterly has come off the bench in every single game this season after missing the first 2 games recovering from an ACL injury sustained in the NCAA tournament last year. While he's only averaging 7 points and 3 assists in 18 minutes a game this season, to have that type of experience coming off the bench is a massive advantage for Alabama that very few other teams have. Quinterly is a fun passer and crafty finisher, and he has a knack for making flashy, momentum-changing plays throughout the game. Rounding out this quintet of guards is 6'5" Naimari Burnett, who, like many of his teammates, was a McDonald's All-American coming out of high school. While Burnett is mainly relied upon for his defense, he still averages a little under 7 points a game, and he's just another one of these guys who is comfortable handling the ball and making decisions as a play connector. In addition to Alabama's ridiculously deep group of guards, the Tide also boasts 6'10" freshman forward Noah Clowney, who perhaps by surprise has started every single game for the Tide and is the team's 3rd leading scorer at 9.8 points per game. Clowney is also a factor on the glass as he grabs 8 rebounds a game, and he's just a versatile 4-man who is a rangy athlete on defense and a capable player on offense, as he's shown some real promise as a straight-line driver and finisher throughout the year. Depending on the game, Clowney can be a go-to scorer, a hustle guy, or the most important defender, and it's this type of malleability that sets him apart as one of Alabama's better players. Finally, anchoring Alabama's nationally elite defense is big man Charles Bediako. The 7-foot sophomore only averages around 6 points a game, but his impact defensively is massive, as he's blocking 1.6 shots per game, and while you'll mainly see him around the basket, he's very mobile as a help defender, and he can hang on switches if needed. Bediako's block rate of 7% leads the team, and per Hoop Explorer, opponents are only shooting 42% at the rim when Bediako's on the floor, compared to 53% when he's on the bench. In closing, we've all heard the saying, styles make fights, and yes, that's largely true. But in college basketball, there are so many styles and so many variants based on rosters and coaching that it becomes hard to discern which style is best. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about style in college basketball. But when a certain system is executed by the right players, that's when the magic can happen. And the Crimson Tide are the perfect example of the benefits you can expect when a team matches style with talent. And because of that, they have a really strong chance to win the NCAA tournament. Thanks so much for watching, and give me your thoughts below.